Hello everyone and welcome to today's lesson on the impact of mining and ores. I'm Mrs Jennison and I'm an Associate Director of Science for Outgrange Academies Trust. Now before we start, it would be really useful if you turned off your notifications so that you didn't get distracted during this lesson. It would also be really useful if you had a pen and a piece of paper. And in today's lesson, it would also be great if you had access to a calculator. This lesson is a part of our Saving Planet Earth topic. We've previously looked at the Earth, our use of fuels and what fuels need to burn, the impact of these fuels and the pollution that they can cause. And in our previous lesson, we started to look at what resources we obtain from the Earth. In today's lesson, we will be looking at some of the impacts of our use of these resources. Our challenge for today's lesson is to be able to describe the impact of our use of finite resources, and our aspire is to be able to explain how our use of resources could be more sustainable. Now, we've previously seen in our lessons how humans have made use of resources on our Earth for warmth, shelter, food and transport. We have also seen that the world's population is increasing, which means we are utilising more resources year by year, and that in the past 200 years our population has increased dramatically and is now more than 7 billion. This means that humans are utilising more of the Earth's resources than ever before, and this is placing a strain on our planet. One way in which some finite resources are extracted is through the processes of mining and quarrying. Mining is the extraction of economically useful material from the ground. Substances such as metal ores, coal, precious stones like diamonds and metals are all extracted through the process of mining. Quarrying is the cutting or digging of stone and related materials from an excavation site or pit. This usually leaves behind a large hole in the ground. I'd like you now to have a go at describing what is meant by the terms mining and quarrying, and to give some examples of resources which are obtained through these methods. Mining is the extraction of economically useful material from the ground, whereas quarrying is the cutting or digging of stone and related materials from an excavation site or pit. Now, mining is used for resources such as diamond, coal and metal ores, whereas quarrying is used for resources such as limestone and marble. Now, the process of mining is best seen firsthand, and you can have a go at an activity that will illustrate the impact of mining. So, should you wish to do this, your task is to make profits from mining chocolate chips from cookies. So first of all, you need a plan on how to spend your £20 million. Make your purchases and prepare your site. Each mining site or cookie has a cost of £2 million. A pair of tweezers costs £2 million also. A needle, or I used a clothing unpicker, that costs £1 million. Your labour costs are £1 million a minute. So for every minute you are mining, you are spending £1 million of your budget. Now there are also some penalties. So if you damage the site, that's going to cost you £3 million. And your contamination. So if you touch the cookie, each time you touch the cookie, there is a £2 million penalty. So touch with your hands, you can only touch them with the tweezers and the needle. Now at the end of this, you can also calculate how much you would have made and make a net profit. Any whole chocolate chips would give you a profit of £5 million each, and a partial chip would give you a profit of £2 million. Now, there will be a point at the cookie mining where you have to have a look at the damage you have made for your site. And if you touch the cookie at any point with your hands, that is contamination. Now, if you wish to do this task, now would be a great time. Alternatively, you can watch the video that will be inserted here. So in this short video, I'm going to have a go at the cookie mining challenge that you can try at home if you wish. I have purchased 2 mining sites and drawn around them as it says in the instructions. I have £20 million startup cost. Now my 2 mining sites would be £4 million. I'm going to use a pair of tweezers, which would cost me £2 million. And I don't have a mounted needle because I'm at home, so I thought this was the best alternative. It's an unpicker, so I'm going to use that instead of a needle, but keep it at the same cost as the needle. Now I am going to try and mine as many chocolate chips from my mining sites as possible, and I will time myself to see how long it takes, obviously because I've already spent £7 million and my budget, so to speak, is 20 million. That means the maximum amount of time I can have is 13 minutes. And if I touch anything, I'm going to be fined. So I'm going to try and do it as much as I can and see how much profit I can make. So I'm going to set myself a little timer of 13 minutes. And see how many chocolate chips I can mine from these cookies in that time. So So I've been doing this for 7 minutes now, and whilst I do think I'm actually becoming quite a successful chocolate chip miner, I have made a bit of a mess of my house. So I am going to leave it at 7 minutes. So I have no doubt in my mind that I do not think I'm going to be able to get these sites back into their previous conditions. So I'm going to have some fines there. And I'm just going to have a little bit of a tidy up. I also touched it twice with my hands, so I'm going to have to fine myself twice for contamination. So I'm just going to have a little tidy up, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to calculate the costs and the profit of my cookie mine. So I've calculated my cost. I actually went a little bit over because of the damages that I have made, so I'm going to have to take some profit away from this. Now, I managed to mine 38 whole chocolate chips, which means I have 190 million from that. And then I had 5 partial chips, which is another 10 million from that. I was really lucky. These cookies had a lot of chocolate in them. Now that left me with a 200 million pound profit, but actually it cost me 24 million to set up. So let's just work out my net profit. So my net profit is 200 take away 24, which is 176 million pounds, which if I was a cookie miner would be a fantastic profit. But I just want to reassure you the damage that I caused to those sites, and that's not including the bits of cookie that flew off and are now all over my office. So as you can see, mining in this aspect is not a very clean thing to be doing. And there is going to be quite a lot of issues surrounding mining. So whilst I was quite a successful cookie miner, and I did get quite a lot of chips from my cookies, it did make a mess, a real mess. I could not have repaired them back to their usual site, so I completely damaged the site. I'm still finding bits of cookie all over because they were just flying everywhere. So I did make a little bit of a mess. So you can see there's quite a large impact from quarrying. Imagine that instead of chocolate chips, that was removing diamonds from the Earth's crust. You're going to have to break it apart, dig them out, and you are going to damage the environment. So it is worth starting to think about the profit versus the impact. So if you did this yourself, feel free to pause here and answer these questions. But what I'm going to do here is go through these questions in terms of my cookie mining. So it cost me £24 million to set up my cookie mine. My profit was 200 million. And my net profit was 176. So that cost did include my penalties for damaging my site and contamination and such. I did make a profit because I mined a high amount of a valuable resource. I managed to get quite a lot of whole chips. I wouldn't have had as big of a profit if the chips would have broken up. So I was quite lucky in my site itself. So that was the only reason I made a profit. I could not in any way, shape or form return that land to its original condition. Did my mining operation affect the greater environment in terms of my office? Yes, it did. There was a lot of dust. It spread all over my desk, all over the room. It was actually quite loud because the cookie was breaking up. Now, if that was a mine, that definitely would have affected the surrounding area. I'd have had a lot of dust, I'd have had a lot of noise pollution. That's on top of the visual pollution of the devastated land. So no, I couldn't return the land back to its original condition. But I did obtain a high amount of a valuable resource. And if this was a mine, I also provided some jobs for people. So there are some advantages to this process as well. So based on the damage you made to your cookie, describe how the environment is damaged when mining for finite resource. The land itself was broken apart. So in terms of a habitat for animals, those animals that lived in those areas have lost their habitat. It could not have been repaired to its original standard. There was dust pollution, which would have been air pollution. And if this was an actual mine, any machinery would have been an issue. So whilst I was very profitable and I got to eat some cookies, if this was an actual mine, it would not have been a good impact on the environment. So I'd like you now to have a go using what we've just seen in the cookie mining, giving me some advantages and disadvantages of quarrying, which is, remember, removing rocks from land, cutting them out to be used as building materials, and mining, which is removing ores from an area of land. So the advantages of quarrying and mining are that you are providing a useful resource which can be utilised by us for many different things. Other advantages are that you are providing jobs and you can produce a profit, and both of these things are very good for the economy. At the end of the use of the quarry or mine, it can be converted into something like a lake or a park, which could reintroduce some habitats into the area. And we have seen quite a few of these mines have been converted in local areas. Some disadvantages, however, are noise pollution, because it's a very loud process. You are damaging the habitats of the local wildlife. There could be a lot of dust. You are ruining the scenery, so that could be classed as visual pollution. And there's an increased amount of traffic due to the lorries that would be involved in transporting those resources out of the quarry or mine. And that can increase the amount of air pollution also. So with these advantages and disadvantages in mind, I'd like you to have a go at evaluating the use of quarrying and mining to obtain materials. Now, when you are asked to evaluate, It's important that you ensure that you give advantages and disadvantages of each. So in this case, for quarrying and mining, you want advantages of these processes and disadvantages. To form a balanced evaluation, you also need to justify your choice. Okay, so you need to give your conclusion at some point in that evaluation. So you could word this very simply as, I think that this should happen or shouldn't happen, and then balancing your evidence to justify your opinion. So now it's time for you to mark your work. In an evaluation, your answer needs to fit into one of the three categories below. The marks are then decided by how well it fits into that category. So for a 1 or 2 mark answer, a student would have made relevant points but not necessarily linked these points or provided extra information about them. For a 3 to 4 mark answer, you could have some linked reasons and you may have a simple judgment. But for the full marks, 5 or 6 marks on this answer, you need to have a judgment that is strongly linked and logically supported by a range of correct reasons. So I'm going to split my mark scheme into advantages and disadvantages, and then remember that to get into the between 3 and 6 marks, you need to also have a conclusion showing your opinion. So I have put linked statements in italic so you can see where the linking statements would be. So you're obtaining a useful resource and those materials are finite and limited in supply. So as you can see, that is in italics. You're providing jobs which will improve employment in that area. You can produce a profit, which is good for the economy. That's your linking statement. And at the end of use, you could convert those quarries or mines into lakes or parks, and then that would reintroduce some habitats following the end of the use. And that's again in italics, so that is one of your linking statements. For your disadvantages, noise pollution, which would be an issue for people and animals living near the quarry. You're damaging habitats, which will reduce the numbers of wildlife. You've got your dust, which could be really bad for people with breathing issues and cause dirt in your surrounding areas. You're ruining that scenery, which is visual pollution. And you've got increased traffic, which could increase the amount of air pollution in that area. So if you have a couple of advantages and a couple of disadvantages with those linking statements, then you are looking at a 5 to 6 mark answer. But you would still make sure that you had a conclusion. So at some point in your answer, you should be saying that you think quarrying is good or bad and giving your opinion. That's everything from me in this lesson, and I will see you all soon.